Today, we'll be taking a look at a new Seiko Prospex speed timer, JDM reference SBER001, also known as SFJ001 internationally. Released to celebrate 40th anniversary of the release of the world's first 1/100th of a second analog chronograph by Seiko in 1983, in true Seiko fashion, it has absolutely nothing in common with the 1983 model, except the fact it can measure down to 1/100th of a second. Where this model does draw its inspiration, even though Seiko doesn't mention it anywhere, are two historical models. One is probably the ugliest watch Seiko ever made, the Kinetic Sportura from the early 2000s that Jay Leno famously wore for a decade, which is evident by the crazy dial layout where the chronograph is the main theme and everything else is secondary, and another, which is one of the most beautiful watches Seiko ever made, the 6138-8020 Panda from the 70s, which is evident by the case shape and the dial finish, as this, just like the vintage Panda, comes with a beautiful silver dial with vertical brushing, where the main time subdial is sunken with a nice polished bevel surrounding it, while the chronograph subdials are first raised off the dial and then sunken in. The combination works surprisingly well, combining the weirdness of one with classical proportions and beauty of the other. With just under 42 mm in width and just over 48 in length, it is a really well-proportioned watch that has a modern size but is still wearable even on my small 6.5-inch wrist. Even though the T-shaped end link increased the total lug-to-lug to 53, they point almost straight down, not really causing wearability issues. Speaking of the bracelet, it looks like it has been borrowed from Citizen, as it looks and feels almost identical to the one found on the legendary Nighthawk, which is a good thing, as it is incredibly comfortable and with an all-brushed finish goes great with the watch that also features all-brushed finish with just the bezel sides being polished. The buttons are oversized, even larger than the crown, again showing clearly this is a chronograph first and foremost. They're beautifully finished with a small dimple in the middle for your fingers, making the operation a tactile joy. The crown, found at 430, is not a screw-in type and has only two positions, closed and opened. Despite being smaller than the buttons, it is easy to use, but setting the time is a bit of a chore, which I'll explain in a minute. Newly developed, the solar-powered 8A50 is impressive when used as a chronograph, not only because you get to see the crazy hands movement, but also the way the hour hand hides under the minute hand and follows it along to not detract from easy chronograph reading. This hidden hour hand makes the correct color coding used a bit unnecessary. In case you're wondering what color coding is, it is a usage of different colors on hands that display different functions. In this case, all the hands used for the chronograph are white, while the hour hand that is not used is silver. When you have all the hands visible on the dial at the same time, it makes sense. Here, with the hidden hour hand, not so much, but still a nice detail. As a watch movement, the 8A50 is a bit of a missed opportunity. Even though they use 5 motors, one for each hand, meaning they can move independently of each other, for some reason Seiko didn't include the option to set them independently. That means changing time zones or doing DST changes requires you to spin the crown quite a lot, as it is digital, with each click moving the minute hand by 1 minute. To make things simpler, they did include rapid hand movement, but unlike Casio watches where starting it makes the hands move until you stop them, here they only move in 15-minute increments, so changing the time by, let's say, 6 hours becomes a chore. If they added the option of setting the hour hand independently, it would make using the watch much simpler. Hopefully they fix that in an updated version of this movement, if one ever happens. Another thing they could have done is make this a 12-hour chronograph easily by including the hour hand as a chronograph hand, which they decided not to do, probably to save energy, as this will stop the chronograph automatically after 60 minutes. The good thing about the movement is the 6-month power reserve and a low battery indicator, where the watch will move the upper 3 chronograph hands to point downwards, telling you should charge the watch. Just like with any other solar watch, avoid storing it in complete darkness for long periods of time, as letting it drain completely often will shorten its life. Keeping it charged should make it last as long as the watch itself. My oldest solar watch is 20 years old and still showing no problems whatsoever. Another very Seiko thing about it is the misalignment. Of the 5 hands used, 2 are misaligned with no option to correct them, even though the movement does have hand alignment function. At this point, the misalignment issues are making me laugh more than they bother me, as I'm starting to think Seiko is doing it on purpose to troll us. Despite all the issues I mentioned, I'm still completely in love with this thing, as it captures the old, brave spirit of Seiko when they were not afraid to push things into new and original designs, instead of just reissuing their historical models. I also love the way it looks. And in life, when we find something to be pretty, we tend to forgive and ignore the shortcomings, no matter how bad they are, which is why this will most likely stay in my collection. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and until the next video, bye.